Chapter 3. You're getting 2 today, because I love you all so much. The small blue door led to a large purple room. The ceilings were vaulted and seemed impossibly high. The walls were painted a pastel purple, the floor a patchwork of fluffy rugs that sat atop oversized floorboards. Propped up against the wall was an enormous teddy bear. The bear was surrounded by other stuffed animals and other assorted toys. Sat directly in the bear's lap was the red-headed girl from earlier. Aiden sat across from her, fidgeting with the straps of his overalls that he now wore, and chatting idly with the other group members. The blonde boy sat nearby, scowling into the middle distance, saying nothing. His eyes were bloodshot, his cheeks damp, and his upper lip noticeably bare. The lanky boy stood just apart from the group. He peeked through the gaps in what appeared to be a tall wooden fence that surrounded their immediate area. All 4 heads swung in her direction as she exited her dressing booth. It appeared that Vanessa was the last of Dr. Nora's group to finish dressing. "Vanessa!" called Aiden, his freckles bunching as he smiled and waved her over. Vanessa crept nervously forward, her dress swishing as she walked. She sat cross-legged next to Aiden. "Nice dress," said the red-headed girl, who herself was dressed in a sunny yellow pinafore. The blonde boy snorted, and the red-headed girl rolled her eyes. "Ignore him," she said, waving her hand dismissively and shooting the boy a pointed look. "He's just grouchy because they shaved off his baby caterpillar." The blonde boy glowered further, but didn't respond to the jab. To be fair, the girl wasn't incorrect about the size of his former mustache. It had been more like a sprout than the bountiful crop the boy had clearly hoped to grow. But still, the unkind tone had discomfited Vanessa. Was this girl a bully? Or did she and the blonde boy know each other? Maybe she just didn't understand the full impact of her words. Vanessa couldn't tell. The girl shuffled forward out of the bear's lap to rest on the floor. She looked at Vanessa, who felt unable to meet her gaze, both out of anxiety and intimidation. "I'm Piper," she said, glancing at Aiden, who had snapped to attention upon hearing her name. "Piper Hayes," said Piper, once more rolling her eyes. Aiden smiled in appreciation. "I'm Vanessa," said Vanessa, quietly. "Vanessa Ann Henbury," said Aiden, pointedly, and Vanessa managed to smile. "That's Danny," said Piper, pointing to the lanky boy who had just stopped peeking through the fence and was headed over back towards the group. Danny gave a brief wave, but remained silent. "And this bundle of joy over here is Francois!" "Frank," said the boy, gruffly. "Francois is terrified. Not that he'd ever admit it," said Piper, as Frank glared daggers in her direction. "Danny, Frank, this is Vanessa." "I'm pretty scared too," admitted Vanessa, in an attempt to support Frank, who appeared as if he didn't appreciate Piper's attempts at humour. "I'm pretty sure we all are," said Aiden. "Well, not her," he said, flinging his hand dramatically towards Piper. "But the rest of us are." "Why aren't you scared?" Vanessa asked Piper in surprise, unable to comprehend such a notion. "Oh, I've been here before," said Piper, grandly. "Twice. It's like a holiday." "You've..." said Vanessa, looking up to at last meet the red-headed girl's stare. "Yep," said Aiden, flopping onto his back. "She's nuts. She actually likes it here." Vanessa gaped. So that was what the brochure meant by recreation. Some people did actually choose to come here. "So," began Vanessa, "what's it like? What happens here? What's a caretaker? Where are we now? What are they going to do to us?" she finished frantically. "Whoa, calm down," said Piper. "It's really not all that bad. They just treat you like a kid for a month." Piper stretched out, using the bear's lap as a pillow. "A caretaker's just the person they've assigned to look after you," she said, inspecting her nails. "But," said Vanessa, "what do you mean, look after? And how do they pick who gets looked after by who?" Piper shrugged, looked at Vanessa momentarily, and began to idly twirl one of her braids around her finger. "No idea," she said. "They compare personalities, I guess. They wouldn't put you with someone awful." Piper sat up. "I don't know that they even have awful caretakers here. Everyone I've met has always been nice." She shrugged again, and let the braid drop with an audible flop against her chest. So really, Francois, she said, turning to smile impishly at him, there's no reason to be scared. Oh, can you shut up for once, Piper? Shouted Frank, his hands balling into tight fists. I'm not scared! The dam broke, and Frank began to cry. The group was silent, Piper most of all. She bit her lip, her brows meeting in concern. When Vanessa looked at her, she saw a look of disappointed realization in the red-headed girl's eyes. Wait, said Aiden, who hadn't noticed that the ambient had become strained as Frank buried his face in his hands. If you're here for fun, why are you part of this group? I see Dr. Nora as well, explained Piper, her tone soft, her eyes still locked on the rug. It's just more fun if you get here in a group. She gestured vaguely to the group that sat around her in a circle. That way there's people to talk to make friends. Piper picked up a toy truck that was nearby and began to pilot it idly, her lower lip still firmly between her teeth. Frank had ceased crying. He now looked in Piper's direction, an unfathomable expression on his face. It was a face that seemed more youthful, vulnerable without his facial hair. It matched the dungarees he wore, which were navy and striped. Slowly, Piper looked up towards Frank. Their eyes met for a moment. Vanessa could all but hear the apology that Piper desperately wanted to give. No verbal apology came, but rather a silent exchange of understanding. Frank merely nodded, and Piper gave a small smile. So, does anyone have any questions then? Said Piper, her boisterous tone restored. I do, said Aiden, flinging his hand into the air as if there were students in class and not 5 adults who were about to be treated as infants. Yes, you, the grubby one, said Piper, who had risen to her feet and was pointing at Aiden. Aiden seemed to appreciate Piper's sense of humour more than Frank had, and he laughed. So, began Aiden, what happens if we just go, no way, not wearing this stupid outfit? Aiden snapped one of his overall straps and just, run away. Did you not read the pamphlet? Asked Piper, drolly. I thought they were pretty obvious about it. I read it, protested Aiden defensively. I just didn't read the whole thing. Neither did I, said Vanessa. Piper nodded. I get it, she said. It's not exactly best-selling fiction. Piper smiled a wry smile as she slid backwards and once again used the giant bear as a pillow. The discipline you get is based on your caregiver, explained Piper. Vanessa shivered at the word discipline. It evoked imagery that she could do without at that present moment. So, if your caregivers are more... Piper paused, searching her brain for the right word. Progressive person? She decided on. Then so whatever punishments you'll get. Vanessa shivered with even greater intensity at the word punishments. Aiden was agog, his eyes wide. And if they're not? He asked. Then over the knee you go, said Piper, smiling a bright smile that clearly attempted to mask her own fear. Oh, fuck, said Danny, his deep, unfamiliar voice startling Vanessa, who had not yet heard him speak. I'm not here for that. Technically, began Piper, that's exactly what you're here for, if you want to get literal about it. Danny groaned, stooped to retrieve a small bear that sat near his feet, and lobbed it in Piper's direction. Hey, maybe you'll get lucky, she said brightly, as she caught the bear. You'll get a progressive caregiver. What's the chance of that? Asked Vanessa, timidly, thinking she'd be more able to survive this experience if she didn't have the threat of a spanking hanging over her. I've met... said Piper, counting on her fingers. 5, she said. 5 guests who didn't get spanked. 5? Asked Vanessa, her volume rising to more audible levels. Yeah, 5, said Piper, scratching her head. Though, to be fair, they might have just been really well behaved. 'Cause, like I've been told about 1,000,000 times, said Piper, wrapping the arms of the bear around herself, how often you're spanked is entirely up to you. Vanessa groaned as her fear turned to panic, her hopes of leaving the park unscathed dashed. She started mentally planning an escape route, looking around. While the fence had a gate, it was very high, and there was no physical way for Vanessa to reach the latch that held it closed. The wall had windows, but they were even further out of reach than the gate latch. Vanessa turned to the door that she had entered the current room through. Her heart sank. There were no doorknobs. "I pick never," said Danny, looking around at each group member individually. "I say we get out of here." And Vanessa realized that while there was no way to reach the gate latch on her own... "Agreed," said Vanessa, pointing to the latch. "If I sit on your shoulders, maybe we could reach?" "No offense," said Danny, regarding Vanessa quizzically, "but I think we might need the two tallest people here if we're going to reach it." Vanessa looked down at her diminutive frame. Even here, in LittleLand, she was the smallest. "Frank," said Danny, "come on, you're the tallest." "Leave me out of this," said Frank, crossing his arms over his chest. "I'm not going anywhere, they're going to catch you." Danny rolled his eyes, turning to the next group member. "Aiden John whatever," said Danny, extending a hand to lift Aiden from his sitting position. "Aiden James Phillips," said Aiden, springing to his feet. "Let's do it." "Piper?" asked Danny. "Frank is right," she said. "You're going to get caught in 4 seconds, but it sounds fun, so I'm in." Quiet girl," said Danny, ignoring Piper's echoed warning and regarding Vanessa. Vanessa, true to her newly acquired nickname, nodded wordlessly. Danny knelt, and Aiden clambered onto his shoulders. With Aiden's arm at his full extent, his fingers reached just shy of the latch. "Quick, someone give me something to reach with," said Aiden, struggling to maintain balance. "Here," said Piper, tossing Aiden a stuffed rabbit, which he caught and stared at. "Something hard! How am I supposed to unlock a gate with this thing?" Aiden shook the stuffed animal demonstratively against the latch. The gate swung open. "Yes!" cried Aiden, Danny, Piper, and Vanessa in near unison. Just then, at the far end of the room, a door opened. A hush fell over the group. "Oh no," came a voice from the opposite side of the enormous room. "We have a group of escape artists." "Oh dear," came a bright voice. Another unidentified person made a noise. "Told you," said Piper, beaming smugly as she leapt to her feet. She rushed to the now wide-open gate and waved happily. "All right. Who's being naughty?" A deep, accented voice inquired. That's the end of chapter 3. Sorry, guys. In chapter 4, you meet the caregivers. And I'll upload that very soon, I promise. Thanks for listening to my story. Have a nice day, everybody. Bye.